crushing to small businesses, and child care centers are no exception. Thousands have closed since March of 2020, and experts say that will have a profound impact on working families, especially women. And Christine Lazar is here to show us the ripple effect. Christine.
Well, we've watched it. I'm sure you've seen it, with women that how hard this pandemic has been on working mothers. Now, President Biden has allocated nearly $40 billion to help the struggling child care industry, but some experts say it may not be enough to bring the industry back where it was from before the pandemic.
Once we opened, the stress was bringing everyone back. Who wears the mask? Do the kids have to be separated in the classroom? How do they eat? How do they sleep? If one child gets it, does it spread? Do we close down?
A lot of directors and owners said this isn't worth it anymore. It's too hard. It's too much work. It's too costly.
I couldn't sleep at night. I was losing sleep. Who's going to take care of my kids? It was stressful.
From shutdowns to restrictions, the coronavirus pandemic has been uniquely challenging for nearly all businesses, but few have felt the intense strain like the childcare industry. In the past 14 months, more than 8,500 California childcare centers have shut down, taking with them thousands of spots for people who need care, adding stress to a system that was already taxed.
I think what we have is a crisis on top of the crisis we had before the pandemic.
Rashid Malik is an analyst for early childhood policy at the Center for American Progress. He says that the cost of childcare has always been tough on families, but now it could be even tougher.
When the pandemic hit, these businesses were trying to basically operate at full capacity just to kind of cover their costs. When people were trying to be safe, we had to go into lockdown. That necessitated fewer children in the same physical space. That meant fewer dollars coming in to pay those costs.
In addition to restricted enrollment, providers have added costs to keep classrooms safe and clean.
This is not a high-profit industry, despite what a lot of people think, and we run lean margins.
Kim Cordoba is the director and owner of the Plumfield Preschool in Santa Ana. She says that the restrictions have been extremely difficult.
We have rebuilt a lot of our enrollment, but it's still not where we needed to be because we were forced to make so many adjustments.
When it comes to the pandemic, how much has your profit margin dropped?
About 40%.
And it's not just getting the kids to come back that's a struggle. Child care directors tell me they're having a hard time getting their staff to come back.
They either don't feel safe, they found other employment, or it's a situation that maybe they're receiving unemployment and it's equal to what they were making when they were teaching preschool. If we can't find staff, they can't keep their doors open.
And now, as California is slowly starting to open back up and people are returning to work, finding a spot for your child isn't that easy.
Between the small children and the distance learners, they weren't able to take on any more children.
Wendy Bruns is a single mom with twin 5-year-olds. She's also a 4th grade teacher. She found herself between a rock and a hard place.
It wasn't even just about my own kids. I had developed relationships with my students, and I felt like if I wasn't able to return, that I was going to be letting them down. So I felt it was an impossible task. I'm either letting my family down or I'm letting my students down.
Wendy took a leave of absence from her job, both to be there for her kids and because of the lack of available and affordable childcare. And Wendy isn't alone.
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of moms especially have had to quit their jobs, not because they wanted to, but because somebody had to be at home with kids.
But for the parents that are going back to work, childcare providers like the Boulevard School's Rhody Vogel want you to know that they are as committed as ever to following protocols and putting your children first.
We had to learn all new rules, regulations. You have to feel safe. Don't come to school if you're not feeling safe, but you have to do what you're comfortable doing.
From restrictions and reopenings to costs and closures, childcare in California is in crisis, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
It's going to make it very difficult for families to return to the workforce if they can't find a space for their child to have quality care or they can't afford it.
Childcare providers tell me even those centers that have stayed open, some are hanging on by a thread. And another shutdown or even a localized outbreak could be the tipping point that would force them to close their doors for good. Pat?
But Christine, if they do close their doors, what will that mean for mothers in the workforce?
Well, the outlook's not good. We know that about 3 million women left the workforce within the last year. And before the pandemic, women made up more than half of that workforce. And we know that essential workers were even harder hit due to the lower pay and the fact that they usually cannot work from home. And that means women of color have been disproportionately impacted. So some solutions, well, investing in childcare, including subsidies for working parents and having companies offer more flexible hours and support, such as paid sick leave. Pat, back to you.
And maybe space in their buildings.
Yes. And as we talked about, grandparents also have really stepped in here. I know my own mother did that for me for the last 15 months. She's been with me. So if people don't have that support, they don't have the child care, they don't have the employer, they don't have the family support, what do? They leave the workforce.
Yeah, so need some lifelines. All right, thanks so much, Christine. And look, there's more. Our coverage of the child care crisis continues tomorrow. Christine and political reporter Tom Waite will host a live town hall to hear from people affected and those working to help families. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. and it's streaming on CBSN Los Angeles on CBSLA.com.
Congress approved the American Rescue Plan earlier this year. It included $50 billion in expanded tax credits for childcare. Parents will get from $3,000 to $3,600 per kid through the end of the year to help cover the cost of childcare.
It's historic, and it's our effort to make another giant step toward ending child poverty in America.
In all, the president has proposed $225 billion in new childcare spending over 10 years. There's been little support among Republicans, who say the monthly child tax credit payments, now available to more than 35 million American families, amount to an expansion of welfare. While the administration and Democrats counter the money will help parents pay for childcare, allowing them to work.
It has a huge impact for families who are already low to mid-income. For a family of 4 who has 2 working parents, each making about $40,000 a year, if they have 2 children, they're paying maybe $300 to $350 per week in childcare costs alone. So having additional money available up front per month really gives them a lot of breathing room.
I have had parents say that they're going to be saving it for back to school clothes, school supplies, those types of.
Hey guys, it's your girl Samantha here. So today we're talking about the child care crisis. There's so much it's going to have to unpack here because there is so much involved in this situation. So as you saw in the first video, a lot of child care centers are closing for good. So that means less child care options for parents. And I know some people don't care because America is not child friendly. America doesn't seem to really care about families or children until they need people to go to war or work in their little raggedy corporate American companies. So, child care has always been an issue. But of course, now that the pandemic's here and everything shut down, now you have middle-class suburban white women who can't afford or who can't find childcare either, because childcare has always been expensive. And even though they have a quote-unquote welfare system where you can get vouchers, daycare vouchers or whatever, it's like jumping through hoops trying to get that assistance. You have to work your butt off. You have to submit a lot of paperwork, you have to go through a really rigorous process to be qualified and approved for that financial assistance. And a lot of times mothers just don't meet the criteria. They don't get approved. And then what? What are you going to do with your children? So the first thing I wanted to say, because I was just listening to these women talking about the child tax credit. The child tax credit is a joke, okay? So it's still not enough money. I'll give my example. You guys know I have 5 children. Even if you had a family of 4 with 2 working parents and the 2 kids, you would probably be getting, you get like three, say like after a certain age, I want to say after the age of 5. Oh yeah, so basically they said, okay, if your child's going to be 6 by December 31st, you get $300. I mean, you get $250. If your child is going to be not 6 yet, so they're going to be 5. If they're going to be 5 and under, by December 31st, you get $300 and a month. And I'm like, how is that supposed to help with childcare? So I don't know if they think that daycare costs $250 $300. I left out a whole $50. I don't know if they think that daycare costs $300 a month for like one child, but that's not how much it costs. So I don't know if they missed that or what was going on with that. Like I don't know how that's supposed to help anybody in regards to daycare. Like the most that money does for me is help me buy groceries. A lot of people, like if they don't need it, they're saving it. Some people, like with me, my family, I'm actually using the money to pay things off so that if they don't expand the child tax credit or continue it into 2022, then I will at least have less monthly bills. So that's how I'm using the extra. I get like an extra, because you guys know I have 5 boys. I get an extra like $970. I get $970 for my sons. And that's not even including all of my children, because the government never got a system together. So a lot of parents were not able to update the number of children who are actually living in their home. So if you had a baby this year, like after you filed taxes, because they go off of the taxes of 2020. So if you filed taxes this year for last year, I know it's confusing maybe for some people, but if you filed your 2020 taxes this year, that's what the government is mostly primarily going off of. In some case-by-case instances, they might be going off of 2019 for some people, but for the most part, they're going off the 2020 tax year. And so that was last year. So if you say like you did not have your child yet, or you and yours co-parent, you guys, are switching off who gets to claim the kids. Basically, the money is going to be going to whoever claimed the children from the 2019 tax year. So that's basically what happened to me. My ex claimed the kids. I let him claim all of our children. Yeah, last year. So this year I did claim some of the children, but I wanted to update it and claim all of them because they're actually staying with me primarily. They've always been with me primarily, but they're staying with me. And so I really need that money so that I can go back to work, so I can pay off things. And it just never came. Like I've basically been getting less than what my family's supposed to get. And so at first, this is the CTC system, or the child tax credit system, like the computer system online, they were saying, oh, you can update it in the end of this September. They kept pushing it back, and then it got to the point where it was like, oh, if you're not able to update it, you'll just see the extra money in your taxes next year. And I'm like, that defeats the purpose. Like, that's not going to help anybody. It's just not. It's not going to help. It might help next year, but it doesn't help me right now. So I'm basically losing out on money. I'm not able to go to work and work my business. Of course, I run my own business, so I make my own hours, whatever. So I'm blessed that that's my situation. But that's not everybody's case, So I just think it's interesting because there's like a conversation going on in the Black community, and it really makes me highlights the fact that the Black American race, we do not value children, our Black children, and we do not value Black women. And I feel like the state of our community shows in what we value. And because we value, I guess, Black males over all else, our community is shit. And I feel like it's going to always be crap because we're not valuing the things that matter, like our children, who are actually the future of our race. So I feel like you're only as strong as your weakest link and your most fragile, most vulnerable link. And if you're not uplifting the people who need it the most, then everybody else is just kind of having this drain on themselves. and it shows. So that's all I wanted to say so far. So let me go ahead and play this video. I'm going to be playing clips so you guys can see what's going on with this childcare crisis. As you saw, the first video was from like 5 months ago. So these news outlets have been on it. They know this is a crisis, and it's crazy because right now we're actually, the Congress and President Biden, they're in talks trying to get this Build Back Better plan, American Build Back Better plan passed, this bill passed, and they actually recently just said Biden has to go out of the country to Europe, but basically he delayed it because they can't come to an agreement with the Republicans. The Democrats and Republicans, of course, once more are failing their citizens, and they cannot come to a high enough budget for the American Build Back Better plan. So the one thing they're cutting out is the child care money that they wanted to give, I guess give businesses or parents to help pay for child care. So people could not care, they could care, whatever, but that's going to have a huge drain overall, because if people can't put their kids in quality daycares, then they can't go back to work. When they can't go back to work, businesses are going to shut down. So even if you're single with no kids and you think this is not about you, you will be affected. So when you can't get your latte because the person who usually makes your latte cannot come in, now Starbucks is closed because there's a labor shortage, because people they're not going to leave their kids at home by themselves. You're not leaving your babies at home alone to fend for themselves. So I know America likes to be very narcissistic. I feel like our country's breeding a whole generation of narcissists. It just gets worse each generation. People get more and more self-centered and self-absorbed, but eventually, so you have to talk to people, eventually you're going to feel this impact. Even if you thinking you don't feel it now, all of these shortages comes back to this. So the truck shortage, the supply chain being choked in California ports, you know why that's happening? Because they don't have anybody to take the stuff off the truck. So they're literally boats, ships just out at sea with containers stacked to the nines and nobody to unpack them. Something as simple as that. And then when they unpack them, who's going to put them on? Who's going to get in the truck and take them to the stores where they need to be at? And then when you take your self-centered self into the store to go buy stuff, you're going to be crying because there's nothing on the shelf. So again, this is an issue with America, because like I told you guys, I used to live in Belgium for 2 years, and it is just such a different world. Sweden, Norway, other countries get it. Other developed countries get it. They don't look at social programs as welfare. America has such a negative connotation attached to helping others, and that's just why we're narcissistic. That's why this country has become a nation of narcissists, because people don't want to help other people. They're not self-aware, that they're just thinking about themselves. They try to gaslight and explain it as something else, but it's no, you're selfish. We have to worry about the next person, or it will affect us in some way, shape, or form. And it's sad that you don't care until if you figure out, oh, this can hurt me. Now I have to give a crap. You should have given a crap before you realized it was going to come back to you. And so that's what the pandemic really did, is really busted. And I mean, we're still feeling it, despite the vaccines and the mask, and we're figuring out how to get around this virus and how to live with it and whatever, and how to beat it and deal with it. And, despite all that, we're still looking at the after effects of this virus and what it is really just opening up the whole reality of this country. This country is very selfish. And so you have people who don't want to wear masks. You have people who don't care about others. So they're like, well, I don't have to pay my taxes for them to, be able to afford welfare or whatever. And it's these are just social programs and everyone benefits. It's this. That's the problem, is everyone benefits, and now people are feeling it. And the crazy thing is, people are feeling it, but they're so self-absorbed, they don't even know why things are happening. They're wondering why businesses are not reopening ever again. They're wondering why there's a shortage of everything. They're wondering why there's a labor shortage. They're wondering why there's a teacher shortage, why there's a childcare shortage, why there's bus drivers that aren't driving. You know why? Because reality sucks. And this is the reality. America's selfish. And America's always is becoming the world of me. And a lot of that is part of it is because of racism. Part of it is just because of keeping up with the Kardashian, isms. Everybody's trying to be something they're not. They're just worried about material items. And like I tell everyone, 2021 is chickens coming home to roost. That's where we are. The proof is in the pudding. The numbers don't lie. And people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off right now. And honestly, I am just sitting here laughing. Like there's actually a lot of people that despite this craziness, they are winning. They are benefiting from the crazy. They are able to take full advantage of some of the things that's going on. And I think those people are the people who are good people. Maybe God is blessing us because we're good. So even through all the crazy, my family has actually been able to win. Like we've actually been able to make gains despite being in the middle of a pandemic and then having whole shortages everywhere in the next year. My family continues to be able to make strategic moves with the things that the government is doing to try to get us out of this mess. And it's just crazy because the reason why I don't feel bad about it is because the issue isn't the Band-Aid that the government is putting on everything. The issue is the fact that it is a Band-Aid and you need to find the root of the problem and fix that. And the root of the problem is the selfishness of this country. When you take care of families, you can uplift the entire country. That's just what it is. Children are the future of the country, whether people like children or not. It is not about you. If you want your country to be successful, you have to invest in your children. So from the time they're born to the time they're 18, the government needs to be investing in the families. And you see the difference in the countries of people who get paid leave. Like other countries that get a year paid leave. We got shut down. Actually, no, that's what they said had to come out was the family paid leave. Either way, it's like the same thing to me because I'm like, you can't even stay home with your baby. They went from 12 weeks to I think it's down to 4 weeks or something. I'm just like, other countries you can stay home for a whole year. This is ridiculous. You can't even bond with your baby for the first year. You pop your child out and then you gotta hand them over to some stranger to take care of your child for that first year. And then so you're paying for daycare that time you have your kid almost. You're already having to come out of pocket for daycare. Then you have the second and third year and fourth year that you have to pay for daycare. And then it's not until they're 5 you can finally put them in public school. Why are those 5 years you're just on your own? And the real issue is people are like, well, not my problem. Yeah, it's not your problem until these are the children that have to give you service in these businesses and they're dumber than a box of bricks. They're rude. They don't know how to do math or whatever. It's like it will come back to bite you in the ass because the reality is you live here too. And just like the COVID-19 has taught us, if there's a homeless person that doesn't have health care coverage, they can infect an entire damn community with their virus because they aren't getting the health care that they need. It's just that simple. So it's like it's coming down to how selfish how much longer can America just be this selfish nation? Because we look really bad. We should not be struggling this much to be a world power and to be America. My ancestors built this most powerful country in the world and it's collapsing. It's literally collapsing right before our eyes. So how's that I'm not going to have any kids working out for you? How is that, I don't want my taxes higher because I don't want to pay for someone else's health care coverage. How's that working out for you? I've had people tell me that and they look like they literally just came out of a trailer park. They look run down and beaten up. And I'm like, if anybody, it looks like you're probably needing some universal health care. You probably don't even have any health care coverage. And I mean, some places they are the majority of the people that are on Medicaid that are white, and those are the same people that look like they don't want to pay. It's just almost it's almost like unbelievable to me. Like, I just don't even understand any of it. I know a lot of it is rooted in racism. I know people are like, God forbid, I have to help others. Another issue I find really interesting too, on just off topic a little bit, but immigration. I feel like we need to get immigration together. I feel like we focus way too much on immigration when you already have citizens here that you need to take care of, and you're struggling to do that. So I just feel like before we start bringing in more people and supporting more people, we need to focus on the people that are actually American citizens and get us in a healthy place so that we can actually be productive citizens of society. And then you can talk about bringing in more people. Again, the other developed countries, you cannot just be coming in there through their borders and call yourself a citizen. You cannot be demanding citizenship in Germany and Norway and Belgium and Sweden. Like, I know for a fact people aren't rolling over there and just, I'm a citizen, just having marches and protests demanding some citizenship when you're illegal as so it's like, you're illegal, but you basically demanding stuff and acting like you basically almost have more of a voice, and you're getting more stuff than the people who built the country. Make that make sense.
Front per month really gives them a lot of breathing room.
I have had parents say that they're going to be saving it for back to school clothes, school supplies, those types of expenses that they usually don't know how they're going to cover. Now they do have funds that they're able to set aside for those expenses.
Katie Wilcox and her husband will use the monthly payment to help offset the cost of daycare for her 9-month-old daughter, Charlie, beginning in September.
It's going to pay for probably about half of our childcare expenses each month, which is a huge, huge help.
They had hoped to get Charlie into daycare this summer, but there were no openings. So Katie, who's a finance director, and her husband, who's a substance abuse counselor, luckily were able to rearrange their work schedules to cover caring for their daughter.
I would love to know where her daughter's going, that this is going to pay like half the cost for her childcare. I would love to know. A child under the age of 1, which is what her daughter's looking like because she's not walking. Wait, was she walking? Anyway, she's little. She's an infant. She's not potty trained. She's not 4, and you're telling me your $300 a month is going to cover half the childcare. What daycare do you go to? Please sign me up.
Katie says they're grateful they were able to find a slot, which in rural areas like the North Country can be especially difficult, where openings are limited and often there are 5 or 6 kids waiting for every slot. Many are hopeful that after the expanded tax credit payments, political leaders will follow up with additional funding for childcare.
I think as people see the impact of this money, it's going to be really hard to justify not continuing. The statistic is that they expect these prepayments to reduce child poverty by half.
You see, they always want to put that face of how this is helping Black families and Hispanic families, and of course they like to call it people of color. I absolutely do not use that term on my channel. So they want to show how it's helping like immigrant families and other people, but white people are benefiting with this money as well. They need this money and they're benefiting as well. And I tell whoever will listen, I tell them, like, if white people need it, it's going to get approved, because they may let a lot of other groups fail, but they're not going to let their own whitey people fail. So white people are struggling. Inflation is through the roof. Everything is costing twice the amount of what it usually costs. And where's the middle class? It's getting squeezed and it's kind of disappearing. And white people aren't having it. And I feel like right now in the government, there's a battle of the haves, like the people who are in the top 1%, and the middle class, white people. Of course, I feel like the Black people are not even in the conversation, because I'm like, where's our reparations? While you're throwing all this money everywhere, you could be sending us our money as well and stop pretending like you don't have it. Because of course, when you want to have it for other nations, you want to send quote unquote foreign aid across the water to other people who don't need it or didn't invest in America. Like they didn't build this country. Why are they getting any kind of aid? Where's our aid? Where's my Black aid? And it's not even aid, it's a debt owed. That's what astounds me. It's like, this is money that you owe Black Americans. But you're sitting here instead and you're throwing money in every direction. And again, like I tell people, curses on you, America, until you do right by black people. This country will never be great.
That's really major. That's major in terms of what it will do for families right now, the parents who are working, who are employees, keeping our economy running. It's major for the outcomes for these children because we know that poverty has a major impact on future academic success.
Like, I literally have not seen black people in this entire segment of news until they mentioned poverty and all that. Then here comes this black random lady, and I'm not even sure she's black, but you know she's not white.
And lifelong outcomes. So if we can change that now, why would we only do that in the short term?
Rising childcare costs are taking an even bigger toll on some working moms. They are being forced to give up their careers.
News 8's Lamore Abrams shows us how parents are coping and how lawmakers are taking action.
Working women already face so much pressure to balance both work and home life. Here's proof. Throw in COVID-19 in for many like myself, new babies, and you've got yourself one expensive recipe, but it's now costing some women their careers. Judith Hamir loves being a stay-at-home mom to her 3-year-old daughter, Pia, but often finds herself searching for work that'll pay enough to cover the cost of preschool.
I miss working at the same time I was still adjusting.
It was just before the pandemic when Judith moved to San Diego from the Philippines for her husband's job. She planned to get right back into her marketing career when she learned what it would cost to send Pia to daycare.
The monthly rate here is like the annual fee in the Philippines.
California already ranks the 3rd least affordable state in the nation for childcare. $15,000 a year is what it costs on average to send an infant to a licensed childcare center. That's equivalent to a college tuition. Now add COVID-19 to the equation.
A lot of directors and owners said this isn't worth it anymore. It's too hard.
In just over a year since the start of the pandemic, at least 8,500 childcare centers have permanently closed across the state. Not only are spots now limited, tuition is up to cover COVID-related expenses. Nationwide, the cost of center-based childcare has spiked 41% during the pandemic, sending demand for in-home care through the roof.
And there is such a shortage of care providers.
Stacey Steelman is the CEO and founder of Crunch Care, a national nanny staffing company based in San Diego. She says a nanny is 35% more expensive now compared to pre-pandemic levels.
It's outrageous. How can a working parent pay $40 an hour for a nanny?
Compounding the problem, she says, many caregivers still receiving unemployment benefits aren't returning to work, making it that much harder for working moms to go back. The latest reports show 42% of women with children under 2 have left in the last year, a quarter of which did so because of caregiving responsibilities due to the pandemic.
And we're seeing moms that have unbelievable careers who've made such advancement to women in the workforce have to leave.
Are you wearing the cutest little outfit?
It was an issue that hit close to home after I had my second. For me, it made a lot more sense to reduce my work hours, so I'm not spending a big chunk of my check to pay for someone else to watch my baby. Fortunately for families across all income levels, lawmakers up in Sacramento say there couldn't be a better time to overhaul the system.
COVID upended this system that exists.
At the heart of the crisis, California Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks made a viral statement about the struggle.
I was actually in the middle of feeding my daughter when this bill came up.
Showing up to the assembly floor with her weeks-old baby Ellie in her arms, pushing for, among other things, childcare reform. She had requested to vote for the upcoming bills remotely, but was declined because maternity leave doesn't qualify.
I had no idea that it would turn into this big thing.
The experience resonated with so many moms, it inspired new legislation, aiming to give parents more flexibility when the unexpected comes up.
You are literally living.
Basically, new legislation was, submitted because these women are white now. Because everybody's been struggling with their kids, but when it's not a white issue, is, oh, you should have chose better, or you shouldn't have had all these kids, or you shouldn't have did this. Why should they be the only ones that get to have children? We could afford our kids if we have reparations, if you stop oppressing black people and make it difficult for us to be successful in a country that we built.
My bill. You are able to do this job from your home with your baby on your lap, and it still means you produce good product and good content and you are good at your job and you can do it, but you just require a little bit of flexibility right now.
Reasonable accommodations is just one approach.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me how understanding everyone is now all of a sudden, because it affects white women when it was just black women who were trying to work and couldn't take off and didn't have the leave because it was barely, I've never could afford daycare. I never even tried to pay it because it's just too expensive. I've always been blessed where I could either stay home with my children and just try to find different alternatives to having to actually pay for childcare since I came back to America. Like I said, in Belgium, I was paying like $267 a month, and because it was based on my rank, and I was like an E4, E5, and it just wasn't astronomical like it is here. Like here, they have a set cost of childcare, and everyone has to pay it no matter what you make. So it's like maybe America could try that, the sliding scale. Like if your income is this much, you pay this much. If your income is this much, you pay this much. And it's like, again, of course the people who make more will be whining and crying about it, but I just feel like they get over so much. Like they don't pay their share in taxes. You're squeezing the middle class to the point where there's almost not even a middle class anymore. It's just a huge gap between lower income class and then the higher income class, like the upper, what do you call it? The high class? I never heard of that, but I guess it's what it have to be. You have low class, middle class, high class, I guess, but it's just quite the conundrum. It's a conundrum, but it's very frustrating as a black mother seeing how things are just moving so quickly now that the people who are struggling are white. So now that whitey has to leave the workforce, now we need to create all this legislation and change all these laws and move things around and give out money and just do all this random stuff, give you more flexibility. Then we all need that flexibility. That's why I left a long time ago, because they wouldn't let me work from home, and I was trying to expand my family and I wanted some flexibility. I just wanted to work from home. I didn't ask to get a handout. I didn't even know, I shouldn't be asking for anything because we should have reparations, but I wasn't asking for a handout or anything. I was like, I'll still do my job and I probably would do it better from home because it's just a more conducive environment for my mental health. Being a black woman is not easy, being a black woman in the IT field. So
the state legislature is working on increasing funding for early child care slots as well as universal TK. They were counting on President Biden's relief bill to make it happen. The Golden State stands to receive close to $4 billion in federal aid to help low-income families pay for child care.
I think the momentum is on our side.
Mary Ignatius is an advocate at Parent Voices. The nonprofit helps working parents across the state apply for subsidized care, a process full of red tape.
This is a bipartisan issue. I don't know what the argument is against increasing and investing in the child care system.
And as relief measures work their way through the system, Judith is holding off on work for a while.
I'll be probably working if ever my second baby would be her age already.
To refocus her energy on baby number 2.
You just have to really enjoy and experience motherhood.
And while it is such a gift to get to stay home, experts say working women are the backbone of our economy, and getting more back to work will help it recover.
Such huge.
Let's go to 3 months ago.
For a typical working family, childcare costs $250 a week or $13,000 per year. But this wasn't always the case.
Childcare was already getting more expensive each year, growing twice as fast as overall inflation.
That's a hefty price tag for most families in the United States. To make matters worse, the childcare crisis causes job disruptions for more than 2 million parents per year. And early educators, 90% of whom are women and 40% of whom are women of color, make poverty wages as childcare programs remain severely underfunded.
2 hours of work, 1 hour with him, 3 hours of work.
It's a multi-piece puzzle, disproportionately impacting women, those in need of childcare to do their jobs, and those whose jobs are childcare.
Before the 1990s, the U.S. was a global leader in women's labor force participation. And in the decades since, high childcare costs and a lack of affordable options have pushed women out of the workforce. Because of this, mothers are more likely to leave a job or not go back to work. This has had a major impact on the U.S. economy, economic growth, and competitiveness. Even before the pandemic, 50% of the U.S. lived in childcare deserts, and America was already losing a whopping $57 billion in revenue, earnings, and productivity. And the coronavirus pandemic brought all of these issues to the forefront.
6 months into the pandemic, parents working from home while taking care of their kids are burnt out.
From 8 a.m. to about 2 p.m. every single day, I'm focused on him.
That's why Congress should pass a bold, sustainable solution for affordable, accessible, quality childcare. Childcare is not only a critical infrastructure for families, but also for the U.S. economy. To learn how you can support federal childcare funding, visit costofchildcare.org and click Take Action.
All right, so that was a quick explanation video explaining how childcare directly affects the economy. And so that can kind of help explain to people why the economy hasn't really ever opened again since coronavirus had everything completely shut down. Like, it may seem like things are open and they're getting back to normal, but I honestly feel like the bottom has not even fallen out yet. Like, people are not feeling the real effects of what's to come, especially if Congress cannot pass a bill that will substantially support parents with childcare. You're probably going to start seeing more people leaving the workforce, more people, more businesses closing because of the labor shortage, and the shit's just going to keep rolling downhill.
For more on this, I want to bring in CBS Money Watch reporter Megan Cerullo. Hi, Megan. Great to see you. So, as we were saying, many people are claiming that they pay more for childcare than for their mortgage. So this kind of disparity points to a pretty significant structural issue. Why does this remain such a major problem in this country?
The current system is untenable, and it's long had issues. The pandemic has cracked open how broken the childcare system in the U.S. is. Like the Times reported, childcare is simply out of reach for many families. I spoke to someone who said that childcare for her one son would cost more than she spends each month on rent. So it's unaffordable to families, and it's difficult for centers to actually hang on to staffers because they are paid so little. Many early education, the workforce is made up primarily of women and minority women who are underpaid, and so they're starting to leave the industry and go work at places like Starbucks, Target, McDonald's, because they make more and they earn benefits like tuition assistance, and they simply can't afford to take care of their own families if they stay in this industry.
Right. Well, it's very interesting because there's also sort of in many big urban centers where there are a lot of, working women who make good salaries, there are sort of these, networks of caretakers and nannies who make, $20, $25, $30 an hour. And that's a lot of money, considering that there's no degree needed in many cases for this. And then, of course, you're talking about childcare centers in sort of maybe less wealthy areas, and how are they going to attract workers, right? Knowing that in other areas, these childcare workers could be making this amount of money, right? So it is a big systemic problem, and that it has been seen largely as a private issue. It's been dealt with for generations as something that parents have to deal with, right? If you're wealthy enough, you can hire, your child care, and if you're not, you just have to figure it out, right? But Democrats are now shifting this to a...
And she hit the nail on the head, like I already mentioned. These videos are basically repeating what I've already said, because I'm living proof as an African American woman who did work in the workforce and had to leave because I just got tired of not really seeing my children. After I got pregnant with my third son, I just felt like I don't have the money to send him to childcare. It's just too expensive. My whole check, half my check would have been going to his daycare cost, because my other two sons were in school already. And it's now that the face of this issue is white, now suddenly everybody cares. But it's before, it used to be White people were doing great because they've gotten so many handouts from the government over the last, few centuries. And so they could hire nannies, they could afford quality childcare. Or like the one lady was saying, and I think in the first video, her mom came to stay with her because they just have that luxury to do that. Mom is probably not working herself to death because her husband makes good money by himself. And so grandma can stay home with her with her grandchild. And it's like, that must be nice, to have that luxury. I know my mom just left the workforce and my kids are like, we just don't have that cohesiveness in the Black community. Also because of the fact that we don't value our children. I don't have that kind of support. So, it's like, it's always been that's your problem kind of thing, even though it takes everyone to support this country and to make this country run successfully. And people are finally starting to see that, you can't leave. You shouldn't be okay with leaving anyone behind. Everyone in this rich, wealthy country that just gives money away to other countries for no reason, or for nefarious reasons, you should want everyone to be thriving. We shouldn't have homeless people sleeping on the streets. That's embarrassing. We shouldn't have mothers struggling to find quality care. We shouldn't have the people who take care of our children to be making, poverty wages. It's just, the whole thing is an embarrassment on our country. And I'm so glad we have the internet now so everybody can see just how much America is floundering about and how they treat their citizens, which is like crap, especially our children, our families. Like, when you don't uplift the future of the nation, you will pay for it. And we're paying for it. That's what we're doing right now. We are paying for it, whether it's through money, loss of money, through loss of knowledge. Like, a lot of reasons also why there's a labor shortage is people just aren't smart enough to take on, they don't have the skills to do some of these jobs that need to be done. So now you're bringing in the Afghans, which is probably the real reason they want to bring them over, and these Indians and stuff to do these jobs, and that displaces a lot of Americans from having a substantive income and having, gainful employment, because you just replaced us with somebody from another country. Make the shit make sense. I mean, is it ever going to make sense in this country? It doesn't. None of it makes sense. And I'm just grateful that I am completely removed from it because it's so idiotic. I'm just dumbfounded. I don't even know what to do. All I know to tell people to do is vote differently. But honestly, it's just exhausting because the obvious steps that should be taken are right in our government's face. And then it's like right when the Democrats are starting to make sense, now you've got the Republicans going left somewhere else. And I'm like, just get it together. Like, where is the bipartisanship when we need it? Because everybody knows everybody needs our children. Whether you have children or don't have children, everybody is going to need these children in the future. If you don't need them already, you're going to need them in the future. And that's one thing I've noticed in my family. Like, they usually don't have a whole lot of interest in my children until they get older. And it's like, oh, now I want them to come visit. And now I'm so interested in their lives. Where were you the last 18 years when these children were growing up into these adults that are now valuable to the family? Now they're considered an asset. They didn't just appear out of the sky. Somebody raised them and invested in them and clothed them and fed them and nurtured them and raised them to be these amazing human beings that now can benefit the entire family. But personally, I'm like, do you deserve the benefits of my adult child now that they're an adult when you were MIA their whole childhood? No, you don't. The only people they're going to be benefiting is me and their parents, their fathers who were there as well. They're not going to benefit even grandparents if grandparents were just like largely absent. They're not benefiting any of that. So it's like, you're going to be getting old and you're going to be on your own. And I might do the bare minimum to help take care of you, but my children won't be involved and we're not going out of our way. And that's just how you have to be in this narcissistic country. The thing I learned is the way to deal with narcissists is to treat them the way they treat you. And that's the only way they feel the pain is when they're getting hurt. They can't be self-aware any other time, any other way. It's until they feel some kind of loss that's affecting them in their self-absorption of a universe. Now it's like, oh, now I understand that she's angry, and they probably still won't fully get it, but they just know they're not getting what they want. So I will not go out of my way to let my children support anybody in the family who wasn't there for the 18 years of their lives. Because why? You know, I know I'm going to be good because I'm their mother and I adore them and I've made them a priority in my life. They're my everything. I know they're my future. And I also think it's interesting, like people who try to shame parents who are like, oh, they shouldn't be your retirement plan. They shouldn't be. Why don't you worry about your lonely family over there? Because your family's a family of one, or you probably have your significant other who's going to probably die before you do, or whatever, or they're going to be just as old as you are, so they can't take care of you. Y'all going to both be in an old folks home together looking crazy. So worry about your choices and what you're doing, and don't worry about what I'm doing over here, because I know what my plan is, and my plan is to not die alone. My plan is to have family members who care about me and not strangers, because that's just the best way you're going to have the best treatment. I don't think anyone's going to care about you better than people who share your blood, especially the people you gave birth to. So as children get older, they mature. And I've seen plenty of times, I've seen a huge difference when I do my closings for real estate, where I see people who didn't have kids versus old people who have kids. It is like a night and day appointment. Like the people who don't have kids, they can't understand the documents. They're shaking because they have some kind of whatever old people condition, and they're struggling to try to read. Their eyesight's poor. It's just a nightmare. It's like we can't even get to the appointment because they don't understand what I'm talking about. Their hearing's not good, whatever. And I'll ask them, like, do you have an adult child nearby, or maybe someone you can call? And it's like, there's no one. That's just depressing. I'm just like, ugh, like, no thanks. And then versus the people who have children, they can be like, oh, let me call my son. He told me to call him when you get here so we can go over this paperwork together. And the appointment is a lot more smoother, and it's over, 30, 45 minutes. It's just, we get in, get out. Or if they have questions or concerns, their children can tell them, Mom, don't sign that. It doesn't sound right, blase, blase, blase. So no one will ever convince me that having children is a burden, a liability, a problem. Only other Black people who are ignorant as fuck think that having children is not a flex. It's like, oh my goodness. I'm just like, this, everybody just falling down. Our country, our community, our Black community, and I say Black community loosely because we don't have a community. We just don't. Nobody works together. It's nothing there that's keeping us together. I don't know my neighbors. I don't want to know my neighbors. Everyone's violent, angry, selfish. It's just that the community's not there. It's just not there. So I told my sister, like, my family is the same way. We're not really as close as we used to be. And so I had kids because I'm like, this is my community. Like, the people under this roof are the people I rock with. Like, we make plans as a family unit, the 6 of us, and of course they have their dads, whatever, but I see it as me and my 5. So all of our future plans, my trust, will, whatever I come up with, is just involving the 6 of us, and that's just what it is. I talk to them about their futures. We talk about what we're going to do with me in the future, which is not put me in an old folks home. We talk about properties we're going to purchase, businesses we're going to start, and it's basically like we have our own little economy within an economy, and I've never been happier. I just tune out all the other noise because everyone's running around making stupid decisions, and personally, I want no part of it. I don't want any parts of it. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life, but you're not going to tell me what to do with mine either and make me feel bad about my choices when I know where I'm headed. I plan at least 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line. I probably have 40 more good years if I'm blessed. And, it's just, you got to plan for it to be good, for those of you some really good years, and not just I'm going downhill from here. What do they call it when you turn 50? You're over the hill now. I mean, that's really how it is. You hit 50 and now it's like, it's probably not as bad as it used to be because of medical advancements, but you know what I'm saying.
Public issue. Should childcare be a public responsibility, and should it be accessible to everyone and not just the wealthy?
Right. So what happens is these child care workers, many of whom are qualified and educated and have degrees, as they become more experienced and more educated, what they do is they move into the public school system where they earn more and earn benefits and can afford to take care of their own families. And so what the Biden administration wants to do through its Build Back Better Act, part of what it wants to do is provide pay parity for early childhood educators with kindergarten through 12th grade educators. And that would incentivize them to stay in the industry, because a lot of these caregivers that I've spoken to have said they actually really like the work. They love working with children. They're good at it. But it's just they can't make ends meet. They can't make a living. And then what the centers say, what the providers say, is that they would love to be able to pay their workers more. They value them. But if they do, they'd have to then pass those costs along to families, and it would put childcare out of reach for these families, for the very families that they want to serve.
So then is the answer to have childcare be partially government subsidized to make up for that difference?
Advocates say that federal intervention at this point is necessary, or else we're just going to continue to rely on this patchwork system comprised mostly of independent operators, and there are going to be these gaps in who can afford childcare when it's something that's really crucial that all American families have access to.
And of course, as you mentioned, the pandemic makes this crisis so much worse, or at least made it clear how bad it's been, right? So this was evident in the September jobs report, which revealed fewer people are getting back to work than expected. And of course, women remain a big group there. So if President Biden's child care proposals don't pass, what can we expect in terms of fixing this crisis? Are there other potential solutions on the horizon?
Well, this would be a historic provision, and it would be by far the largest investment in history. And advocates say that it's really, really essential. And short of the government subsidizing child care, the employers are weighing sort of building child care centers and providing child care for their workers, because they value the talent, really essential. And short of the government subsidizing child care, the employers are weighing sort of building child care centers and providing child care for their workers, because they value the talent, and they recognize that many women in particular, in a heterosexual couple with children, in many cases the woman earns less than her husband does, and so she's the one who's leaving the labor force altogether. And in the September jobs report, it revealed a dip in women's participation in the labor force, and that's really going to erode a lot of progress that women have made over the past decade. And it's this macroeconomic issue too that affects not only families but the entire economy, because women in more cases than men aren't able to contribute and participate.
Can we look at how other sort of industrialized nations deal with childcare to get sort of some examples, or are there no countries who really have the childcare situation figured out?
In the U.S., I think the profession, it's one of the lowest earning professions. I think 98% of other types of workers earn more. And other countries, I'm not as familiar with other countries' systems, but there are places in which it's viewed as a public good, and it's looking like, at least according to those who know the industry best, that's the route we should go to.
Okay. So, of course, you hear them comparing America. Oh, America. Comparing America to other countries, and we're failing. We're falling short.
Many children are back in school this fall, some in person for the first time since early 2020. This brings relief to many parents, but others are still struggling with what to do with their younger children, faced with the rising cost of childcare, which increased by almost about 50% over the last year and a half as the pandemic hit the childcare industry hard. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS Money Watch reporter Megan Cerullo. Megan, welcome. Great to have you with us. So, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently addressed the child care crisis. Let's listen to what she said about it.
For the vast majority of Americans, the child care industry works in precisely the opposite way it worked for us, which is to say it doesn't work at all. Those who provide child care aren't paid well, and many who need it can't afford it.
Megan, as you know, women have been in the workforce for decades. So why is childcare still so out of reach for so many families? Why are we still at this point where it's so difficult to get affordable childcare?
That's precisely the predicament many women in particular are facing, is if they don't have childcare, they can't go back to work. During the pandemic, a lot of childcare facilities closed because we needed to practice social distancing. Not all of them have reopened. And so they're operating at reduced capacity as well because they're severely understaffed. And they're now facing this spike in demand as more parents return to work, return to the physical workplace, and they simply can't accommodate everyone who needs childcare.
And so this is exactly why I have not returned to work, because I could not find assistance just to help me get back to being able to go to work. I needed preschool for my 3-year-olds, and I basically have not worked for months, because not only could I not afford it, but it just was like, I'm going to be stressed out. I'm going to be really burnt out trying to take them to preschool, and then I'm trying to work enough so that I can afford them being in preschool. And the crazy thing is, like, I don't even mind paying childcare, but it's just so expensive. So for me, as I get paid based on, it's kind of like if you were a salesperson, like, it's not like I'm getting paid commission, but you get paid based on like how many appointments I can take. It's like being a real estate agent. And so I really have to like hump it and to just do all these appointments in order to afford my twins being in preschool, because I want them to have a great education. I don't want them to just be getting watched. I want them to actually be learning. And so it significantly hurt our family and impacted our family. So I can just speak from my experience. And I know if I'm going through this, there's many other millions of women who are going through the exact same thing. And it's like, I want to be productive in society. I want to do my closings. I want to, take the appointments and help people close on their homes, which of course, even that hasn't really been that busy, just because the real estate market has been insanely expensive. So a lot of people aren't really refinancing or buying homes anyway. But it's like, I want to be part of it, society. But it's like, you just as a parent, as a mother, as an African American mother, I mean, you're really just like in a rock and a hard place. Sometimes I just be thinking, like, do I get burnt out and try to get out there and work, and then got to get home and take care of the kids, and then I have to pay most of my money to take care, but I'm not getting to see my children. So hopefully the preschool is quality. It just leaves me to the point where I'm like, I'm blessed that I could just say, okay, I'm just going to stay home with my children and I'll teach them myself. But then when that happens, that's me coming out of the workforce. That's one less, job being filled. That's one more added person to the labor shortage. And that's just going to continue until we finally get this child care crisis resolved. And it's really not that difficult to do, just like with universal health care. That's also something that's offered in other developed countries. And America needs to, again, stop being narcissistic, stop being, egotistical and arrogant, and look at other countries and what they're doing, and just take a page out of their book and tweak some of the things that we're doing in our society. Because, of course, we're getting some things right and some things we're completely failing in. So childcare and healthcare are one of those things. They are necessities, and we have been bumbling along for decades, just kicking the can down the road, trying to make it someone else's problem. And once more, COVID has ripped the lid off of things that were always a problem, but now it's affecting, like I said, it's affecting white people. So now it's like, oh, now we have to get some legislation and really make real moves on this and really talk about this and really care about this, because now white women having to walk away from their high-powered jobs because they can't find affordable childcare, or they can't find childcare at all because the childcare centers are closing. So this is a real issue. And, you know, I saw a comment where somebody was like, oh, I don't want to pay my taxes. It's like, that's what Americans have been saying forever, and they sound completely ignorant. It's just like, just shut up. Like, you haven't done any research. You're regurgitating Republican talking points, and you don't really know what you're talking about, because we're actually already paying taxes to a lot of things that I did not agree to, and it's not serving our country well at all. So there's definitely a better way to restructure what we send our tax dollars towards, you know, because all this foreign aid, I didn't sign up for that. So it's like, you know, it's just a lot. It's a lot of stress. It's just a lot of discourse. I'm just angry at a lot of things America's doing. And I feel like right now, for me, in order to deal with it, I am kind of putting my head just in the sand and just kind of hunkering down my children until our government finally gets this shit together. Because I'm like, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Like, there's no bipartisan support on these key issues. And I just feel like I'm going to do my part with the voting, but it's really overwhelming as a parent to watch this country just make these stupid decisions, and they're negatively impacting families, and now it's impacting the single people or the people who are childless, and now they're complaining. But it's like funny because they're complaining, but they don't want to do what needs to be done to fix it. And I actually don't know if you really need to necessarily raise taxes for these things. I feel like it's more of a matter of restructuring and reprioritizing where our tax dollars are already going, because a lot of our money is going overseas, and that's unacceptable.
Issue of supply and demand.
And Megan, even families who can afford childcare say it's just hard to find a spot in a good center because so many centers are at capacity, as you said, the supply and demand issue. What needs to be done to rectify this? And are these bills that are inching their way through Congress right now, especially I'm thinking of that social spending bill, are there provisions in that to deal with this?
That's right. A lot of these centers are at capacity, and the daycare industry already operates on razor-thin margins of less than 1%. Part of the issue is the supply of educators, of early education workers, and that's because they are mostly women and minority women who are underpaid, and so they're quitting. They're leaving the industry, and these centers, if they want to retain their workforces, they have to increase their wages and in turn pass some of those costs on to parents, putting childcare out of reach for them. I talked to one woman whose predicament is all too common for American families, who said that childcare in her state of Alabama would cost her more each month than she spends on rent.
That's a given. If you're paying $300 on average for one child, God forbid you have two. I mean, because I only have my two that need to be in childcare, like need childcare, and they happen to be twins. So yeah, I don't get the benefit of, well, one to be in school, then I'll just have the one. They're the same age. So yeah, even with just one, you're paying, because America's cost of living is so high now, and it's been high for a long time. You're easily paying what you're paying in rent for childcare. It's like you're basically paying rent twice. So yeah, that's a no-brainer. That's not, I don't know where she was living, where childcare was less than rent, and I'm like, give that place out, because everybody's going to be moving there probably, and then the rents really will go up, because now it's that supply and demand thing again. But me living in Northern Virginia, it has always been childcare would have easily went way over rent, and rent was already through the roof.
And so what is being done to address this? Do you know whether that big social spending package that House Democrats are currently haggling over right now has provisions to make childcare more affordable for American families?
So the industry is severely underfunded, and the Biden administration has a plan that would help professionalize it to some degree. So it would provide professional development opportunities for early education workers, which would incentivize them to stay in the industry. Daycare educators, they make like $11 or $12 an hour. 15% of daycare workers in 41 states earn poverty wages, and
see, this is happening because the people, like they said, who typically are in these jobs are not white. That's one reason. And then the second reason is because America does not value children. Because teachers don't get paid that great either. It's not horrible, but it's not great. And I heard in, like, I think China, like another country, their teachers are revered as like this, like really, you know, top class type of job. Like, it's just something you aspire to be, is to be a teacher. They get paid well. They are the top of the echelon in professions. And I'm just like, why is America not doing, like, our teachers to me are at the bottom. Like, they're just not even valued at all. And I'm like, these are the people who are teaching and shaping and molding literally the future of this country. So now you look at people running around who don't want to wear masks, who are fighting on airplanes, who are shooting people in the face because they don't want to put their mask on, who are refusing vaccines, who are voting for Trump, who, you name it, they're doing it. They're just bringing this country down faster than I could say Fafu. And it's because of the school system. Everything can always go back to the American public school system. It's crap. Everybody knows it's crap. Anyone who can afford it is not going to put their child in the American public school system. For us to be a world power, that should not be the case. Like, our American public school system should be second to none. And it's like 10th on the list when you compare it to other developed countries, as far as like what we teach our kids, the test scores, etc. We are always like way at the bottom of the list as Americans. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, and it shows. And I'm like, people are watching us, and I'm just like embarrassed to be an American. I'm just like, why? It's embarrassing. I don't know why everyone's laughing at us. They're laughing at us when Trump was our president. They're laughing at us now as we collapse. It's not funny. But this is our country. It's just completely imploding upon itself. There's really no other way to say it. And it's only going to get worse if our government can't come up with solutions that's going to get us out of this mess, because they're the ones that created it.
This plan would bump up pay to $15 an hour. The other important thing that it would do is it would reduce.
$15 an hour is not enough. It's just not enough. I'm sorry. I personally feel like people who are watching our children should not have to be depending on welfare, on public assistance. I just don't. I think they should be making at least $25 an hour. Like, they should have a comfortable life. And I still don't understand why daycare costs so much and they're getting paid so little. I don't understand why the profit margins are so slim. That's one reason why I wanted to go through all these videos, because I really wish somebody would break that down to me, like how the bills and the operating cost just are so astronomically high. Because for one child, you're literally paying like $1,000 a month. Let's just round it off or whatever. You're paying like $1,000 a month. Multiply that by like 30 kids. How much is your rent for this building? And the electricity and the water and everything? Like, how much is it that the profit margin is so narrow? And then you still get a lot of assistance with like the food that the children eat there. The states usually provide, free or reduced meals. Just all kinds of assistance being thrown at these daycares. So I just don't understand, like, why is the operating cost so high? Like, where's the money? Where's the money really going? How much does the director make? Let's get down to the nitty gritty. How much does the director make? The person who owns the child care center, how much are they really pocketing? What's their salary? Because I think it's a load of crap that the younger, because I do not want someone who makes $9 an hour watching my child. They're going to be angry, they're going to be short-tempered, and they're going to have every reason to be. angry and short-tempered, but not with my kid. Like, I don't want you taking it out on my child because the government and everybody above you, your pay grade, is failing you. And that's one reason why I've always stayed home with my children until they start public, stupid school, because I don't trust the childcare system to treat my children well, because I know people are disgruntled. I know they're not making enough. I know they're probably short-staffed and their tempers are short, and I just don't trust it. And then, of course, once they're in public school, I'm not saying public school is any better, but at least my child can talk and tell me, like, if the teachers are doing anything. And that's why lately, now we have decided, like, I've decided since I've done this with my 2 older kids, that once my 3 younger ones hit middle school age, they're getting homeschooled. That's just what we're going to do. We're going to take them out after 6th grade, and they're just going to get homeschooled until probably like 10th or 11th grade. And they might be able to go back if they weren't a problem before they got homeschooled. And that's just what we're going to do.
Costs to families by about half, so that they're not spending more than 7% of their income on daycare, which would make it affordable.
Right. It's interesting because it seems like a vicious cycle here, right? The economy improves, the more Americans that are in the economy, so that includes women, but women can't go back to work if childcare remains too expensive. Childcare workers don't want to work because they're not making enough money, so then the childcare centers need to charge more. It's like this vicious cycle that almost seems like it does need government intervention because the cost of childcare is so high.
Well, obviously it needs government intervention. And that's exactly why this entire thing has been a complete mess from COVID on to, we're almost at the end of 2021. COVID was like almost in the beginning of 2020. So almost 2 years now, we are floundering about, don't know what to do with ourselves. And it's because our government has not taken the lead. They're letting the states do, piecemeal solutions. One state does this and the other state does that, and it's still impacting all of us overall. So if the whole nation is going to be impacted by choices that are made, then the federal government needs to get involved. They're involved in everything else that nobody wants them involved in. This is where you need to be involved. This is a national issue here. So this is not up to the governors to do their little half-assed, attempts at whatever. It's like, no, we need the president and Congress to do their goddamn jobs and actually come up with real solutions, not band-aid solutions, not, $15 an hour. Like, what is anybody going to do in this economy with $15 an hour? And that's supposed to be minimum wage. It's just like, I can't even, it's not enough money. It's not enough money. Let me do the. So let's say you $15 an hour times 8 equals times 5 equals times, because that's how much you're making a week. 4.3 equals, that's a month. So you're making $2,580 a month. Those wages are for teenagers or for like college students. These are not for people who are supporting full families, because now they're going to need to get public assistance to pay for other things, because you cannot pay rent. Your rent, let's say rent is $1,500. I mean, you get left with $1,080 for the month. You got to get gas, water bill, electric bill, groceries. Like, there's so much stuff that has to come out of that. It's just not enough money. And then put on top of the fact that you have to probably pay childcare so that you can do the work for $15 an hour. It's just ridiculous. And I feel like these companies, I feel like the top people are paying themselves too much, and they can pay their workers more. And I feel like it definitely needs to be mandated by the federal government, because I don't think people are going to do it on their own.
High, and yet it's still not high enough that it's able to attract and retain enough healthcare workers. So there's a point there where it's not matching up.
That's exactly right. These daycare center operators would like to be able to pay their workers more, but again, wages are a large portion of their cost. They'd have to pass some of those on to parents, and then they wouldn't be able to serve those families that they aim to serve. So it's really an industry that needs some investment from the federal government to make it tenable.
And what is the current status of many of these child care workers? As we know, many were furloughed at the beginning of the pandemic, and as the economy has reopened and there is a demand for more of them, we're still seeing such a shortage. Is that directly tied to low wages?
It is. Many of them can't make ends meet. They're employed, but they're still relying on public assistance. And so they're seeking work elsewhere. They're turning to the retail industry where they can make the same or more in positions that are less taxing, less physically and emotionally draining for them. They're even going to work for places like Amazon. And a lot of these workers say that they're actually passionate about early childhood education, but they just can't take care of their own families. And daycare center operators don't blame them. They're also entering into working in public school systems where they can earn higher wages and benefits. And so the industry is sometimes seen as a stepping stone. And as these daycare workers gain more education experience, they leave.
Right. And Megan, as we know, women have been disproportionately hurt by this pandemic. The child care crisis, just continues to impact this. Luckily, schools are open now, so a lot of women have older children who are in school. But when do you think the rest of those women who had to leave their jobs because of the pandemic and because of the lack of childcare, when do you think they will enter the workforce? Is there a danger that some of them may be permanently locked out?
It's dangerous. It is.
You can't be permanently locked out because your child's not going to be permanently needing daycare. So that's a stupid question. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if she means like it'll be hard for people to re-enter the workforce, but it shouldn't be. I mean, it just shouldn't be. You had the job once, go back to it later, get your skills up again, whatever. But I don't know what she means by permanently locked out, but you're not going to be permanently locked out because of childcare, because at some point your kids are going to grow up. So let me wrap this up because there's so many videos apparently. And I think this was interesting. Raising the future of the childcare crisis. Yeah, raising the future that no one cares about because everyone's selfish. Okay, so let me know what you guys think about this craziness that's going on and the child care system, and sound off, are you one of those people that don't want to pay your tax dollars for people's stupid choices? I didn't know children were stupid choices, but whatever. And I think people are just so bitter. I guess the people were saying that don't have any kids, because I'm like, so why your child's a drain on the system, but everyone else's isn't or shouldn't be? I don't know. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.